Hello Recruit, and welcome to an Astroneer Academy 204 Extra. Our discussion today will build upon what you have learned about platforms, storage options, and base building as we look to establish task-specific outpost bases, deciding what you need on off-planet bases, and how you can move your existing base to a new location. At the end of today's course, you will also learn how you can win one of the highly coveted LRD visors. Let's get started. As we begin today, I want to caution you to avoid a temptation that many astroneers fall for. When space travel becomes available, many astroneers feel they need to establish a fully functional base on each planet they visit. They go about gathering all of the resources they need to create copies of everything they have in their first base, and then go about setting it all up in a new location. Power producers, printers, production modules, storage, platforms, and even vehicles are created and transported to a new planet. To be honest, this is a huge waste of both time and resources. If you are really into having a fully functional base no matter where you go in the Silva planetary system, then hey, go for it. You do you. Personally, I think there's a better way. Instead of investing all the time and resources necessary to create 7 or more full bases, think about what you hope to accomplish on each planet and design a task-specific base that can help you achieve your goals. If you hope to complete every mission and unlock every achievement, you will need to visit each and every planet and moon at least once. If you're going to activate gateway chambers and the gateway engine and maybe seek out a vintage probe, you may not really need a base on that planet at all. A rover with a drill, paver, and some extra power could be all you need for those tasks. We will talk more about the Gateway Fast Travel Network in a few weeks and vintage probes next quarter. Of course, you already know that each planet and moon offers a unique combination of resources, because you learned all of that information several weeks ago as we toured the Silva planetary system, so there is merit to setting up some sort of base on nearly each planet. I call these outpost bases for the lack of a better term. Each of these outpost bases serve a very specific purpose and are accordingly planned out for very specific tasks. Let's take a look at different types of outpost bases you can establish and discuss what you will need for each. The simplest outpost base is one where you only wish to extract specific resources using your terrain tool. While you may consider automation for this task, you may not have the research bytes or available resources early in your adventure to set up such a base. Instead, you can establish a very simple outpost base to help you collect resources. Since you will be on foot, you will want to ensure you have oxygen. That means you should bring along several packs of tethers, or at the very least, several nuggets of compound to create tethers. You could rely on some lucky RNG to obtain the compound when you arrive, but I prefer to plan ahead. The tethers are fairly useless without oxygen flowing through them, so you will need a source of oxygen as well. You received a field shelter as a reward for completing the To Parts Unknown mission in Astroneer Academy 201, and that works great for our purposes since it has an oxygenator built in and even supplies a small amount of power. If you have other plans for your field shelter, then you will want to look for an alternative source of oxygen. The simplest way to do this is to create a smaller platform and an oxygenator. I would suggest creating the platform big enough to hold the oxygenator along with the power producer or two. Since this outpost base exists to help you extract resources with your terrain tool, it'd be nice to be able to use terrain tool augments to speed up that collection. By having power flowing to your backpack via tethers, you can ensure your terrain tool augments stay fully powered. It also isn't a bad idea to take along another smaller platform and some storage as well. You can carry the storage with you to the location you will be extracting resources and fill it up. This will allow you to retrieve a greater quantity of resources than relying on your backpack alone. You might also consider bringing along a beacon or two and a good scouting vehicle such as a buggy or a VTOL. Resource deposits are not infinite, and you might find that you deplete a deposit before you have collected enough of a resource. If that happens, you can turn to your scouting vehicle to find another resource deposit and mark it with a beacon. Then you can return to your original location, gather up your tethers, and then place them back down, leading to the new resource deposit. Perhaps you are seeking to collect various atmospheric resources instead. If you recall back to Astroneer Academy 202, gases are available in varying concentration across the planet, with one of the gases being available in only a single location. Before you set up a gas outpost, first investigate where the gas you wish to collect is available in the highest concentration. Doing so will help you gather that gas as quickly as possible. You don't really need a lot to establish a gas collection outpost, with power being your main consideration. I typically do not even bother with an oxygen source for my own gas outpost bases. I simply bring along a beacon to mark the landing spot, then set up my gas outpost base right next to that landing spot. Since my goal is to quickly grab canisters of gas and then return to my production base, the shuttle is more than sufficient for oxygen needs. Power is a big consideration for a gas outpost base, however, as the atmospheric condenser takes a lot of power to run at full speed. If you are going to be collecting several atmospheric resources from a single planet, you will need even more power. Before you rush to pack up every QTRTG and battery you have, stop and consider how urgently you need those gases. Personally, I prefer to set up my gas outposts and then go on about other tasks while the gases are collected. Because of this, I'm fine with allowing the atmospheric condensers to run underpowered. They will still collect gases, they'll just take longer to do it. Unless you want to take along a lot of organic or carbon, I would advise against using generators for a gas outpost. Instead, consult the Astropedia to determine whether wind or solar is a good choice for power. About the only place you cannot rely on solar or wind is Atrox, which just happens to be the place I usually have the largest number of atmospheric condensers. Even though I know it will be woefully underpowered, I usually only bring along the QTRTGs I have to supply power. Sure, it's going to take a while for those gases to be collected, but I have other things to do while that happens. But here's a quick pro tip for connecting your power on any planet where you plan on deploying more than one atmospheric condenser. Be certain that all of your platforms on your gas outpost base are connected to each other so they all share power. Gases at higher concentrations will fill all available storage faster than those at lower concentrations. As the atmospheric condensers collecting the higher concentrations shut down due to full storage, they also stop consuming power. With all of your platforms connected to your power producers, that excess power will now be used to add a bit more power to the atmospheric condensers still in operation, speeding everything up overall. There are numerous different platforms you can consider for a gas outpost, but it is best to use one that can hold both the atmospheric condenser and at least one medium gas canister. Since a medium gas canister can hold far more gas in a tier 2 storage slot than pretty much any other option, it really is the best choice. If you do not yet have the ability to create medium gas canisters, then be sure to take along the largest storage you have available. A medium storage silo will hold 24 small gas canisters, but even using 2 of the smaller medium storages will allow you to collect 16. You may also want to invest the time to locate a wrecked spaceport on a planet upon which you seek to establish a gas outpost. As we discussed in an Astroneer Academy 201 Extra, a shuttle that is properly seated on one of these spaceports becomes fully integrated into the power network of the spaceport. This would allow you to leave an atmospheric condenser in your shuttle and receive power from any power producers connected to the spaceport itself. Now, instead of setting up gas outposts on every planet, complete with power producers and their own platforms and atmospheric condensers, you can create a mobile gas outpost by leaving a single atmospheric condenser in a shuttle and simply ensuring you equip the spaceport with sufficient power. You can also establish a more permanent gas outpost and take advantage of the spaceport's ability to transfer resources into a shuttle. You can refer back to that Astroneer Academy Extra to see a quick demonstration of this functionality, though I have utilized this setup in the Astroneer Academy instance of the training simulation, and it's an incredibly efficient way to establish a gas outpost and quickly transfer atmospheric resources into storage contained in my shuttle. We'll dive into the very basic use of automation I'm using here in a later course. The installed platform that we discussed last week in another Astroneer Academy Extra can also prove useful for a gas outpost. It is large enough to accommodate multiple atmospheric condensers, medium gas canisters, and enough power producers to keep everything running. You will, of course, want to bring along a landing pad to deploy near the installed platform if a natural landing zone does not already exist nearby. The list of possible outpost bases can become nearly limitless, especially once we begin utilizing trains and automation in Astroneer Academy 302 and 303. We will save the discussion of a few other automated outpost base designs for those courses, but I think you have begun to see that with proper planning, an outpost base can become a very valuable destination. Perhaps you wish to expand or even relocate your main base though, so let's switch gears and talk about some best practices for accomplishing those goals. While a shelter is not an absolute necessity for a new base, it does provide some benefits. Sure, you can drop an oxygenator onto a platform to take care of your oxygen needs at a new or relocated base, but I would encourage you to utilize a shelter instead. Why? The answer boils down to navigation. The nearest shelter will always be visible on your compass, making it much easier to navigate back to your base. You could simply place a beacon and forego using the shelter, but if you already have numerous beacons deployed on a planet, only those closest to you will be displayed on your compass. So if you are far enough away from your base, you may not even see the beacon for your base on your compass at all. Additionally, shelter icons are visible from orbit and help you clearly identify the landing spot to select so your shuttle lands at your base. Again, you could use beacons instead, but a shelter removes any ambiguity about what it is marking. That shelter icon is always going to be your shelter, but a beacon icon could be anything you chose to mark with a beacon. You currently have 3 choices for a shelter. The shelter itself is unlocked at the beginning of your adventure and is created with a large printer from 2 silicone and 2 plastic. The pumpkin shelter is unlocked at the beginning of your adventure if you have previously unlocked it as a reward in a limited time event. It is created on the large printer from 1 clay, 1 resin, 1 carbon, and 1 plastic. Despite their wildly different appearances, both of these shelters have the exact same functionality. They have the same number of Tier 1 slots, the same number of power cables, and both feature a built-in RTG that provides power at a rate of 1 unit per second, along with a built-in oxygenator that cannot be removed. Unlike the shelter at your starting base, shelters that you create can be destroyed with dynamite. This is where we find the key differences. The regular shelter will provide pieces of debris that you can turn into scrap with a shredder, while the pumpkin shelter will provide sturdy squash seeds and samples when it is blown up. Please note that you cannot destroy the starting shelter at your first base. While dynamite and other explosions can remove the hard terrain beneath the shelter, nothing can destroy the shelter itself. This is by design, as you could become soft-locked within the training simulation if you have nowhere available for a reprint. Neither of these shelters can be packaged with a packager once they are placed, so choose a good location before you unpackage them. To help you get a good area to work with, consider placing the shelter in an area that is at a slightly lower elevation than the surrounding terrain. When you unpackage these shelters, they will flatten a small area of terrain around them. If your shelter was placed at a slightly lower elevation, creating a larger flat area with your terrain tool will be simpler as you'll be removing soil instead of adding it. You can also utilize a field shelter when moving or creating a new base. If you did not unlock it when we completed the To Parts Unknown mission in Astroneer Academy 201, It will require 8,000 bytes to unlock it in the research catalog and is created on the small printer from 1 silicone and 1 graphene. The field shelter also has a built-in oxygenator and RTG, though it only provides power at a rate of 0.5 units per second. Unlike the other 2 shelters, you can pick up the field shelter once it has been placed and you can even repackage it. It does not, however, automatically flatten the surrounding terrain when deployed. A field shelter works great for smaller bases and outpost bases, but can also be deployed when moving your base to a new location or simply rearranging an existing base. Like most things in your adventure as an Astroneer, moving your existing base to a new location is a lot easier with a bit of planning. If you are relocating on the same planet, a large rover with all 4 vehicles in the rover train provides a huge amount of space for attaching large items and storage. If you will be relocating off-planet, you'll want to make use of the large shuttle as it provides the most storage space. Whether moving across the same planet or relocating to a new one, you will also want to gather a lot of graphite ahead of time and plan on making numerous packagers. By packaging everything up, you will be able to carry more items in the same space, resulting in fewer trips. With a bit of careful planning, you can also utilize any existing storage you have on hand to help carry items to a new location. If you have your sights set on creating an entirely new main base, take a moment to make an inventory of all the resources you'll need to produce the items you want to include in that new base. Instead of producing everything at your existing base, take the required resources, a small printer, and some power producers instead. Once you have chosen your location for a new base, you can begin creating larger printers and platforms from natural resources, then begin creating all other modules from the resources you brought along. To illustrate this point, take a look at everything you see in this base. It is a modest-sized, functional base that is fully powered. If I were to create all of this and then try to move it to a new location, it would take several trips. Yet everything you see here can be created from this. It is a lot easier to carry all of these resources to a new location and produce items there than it is to create them first and then try to move them. Before you create a new base or relocate your existing base, you might want to consider simply expanding your current base. There are several reasons you may wish to expand, but the most common is expanding production. 2 weeks ago, we talked about planning ahead for future expansion and pointed out areas of our own Astroneer Academy base that we had set aside for that expansion. Early in your adventure, you may not have the resources or power to expand your base for additional production capabilities. As you make progress, however, you will often find that one smelter or one chemistry lab simply are not enough for your needs. To demonstrate how you can expand your base, the entire Astroneer Academy base has been overhauled so we can demonstrate a few ways you can expand various portions of your base to speed up production and research, store more resources in a more efficient layout, and even increase power production. For research, I suggest utilizing an extra large platform C, a large storage silo B, and 3 research chambers. With the research chambers on the platform, you still have room to attach a dozen research items to the silo, so the research chambers can automatically load them when their current research is complete. For natural resource production, consider using an extra large platform C, 3 soil centrifuges, a large storage silo B, and several medium fluid and soil canisters. Fill up those canisters with soil, set them all to output, and attach 3 small soil canisters to the silo. You can use the remaining storage slots on the silo to attach resource canisters or other storage that will collect the resources produced by the soil centrifuges. Now you will be able to make 3 times as many resources in the same amount of time and make use of the repeat function on the soil centrifuge to keep producing those resources. To achieve greater efficiency when smelting natural resources into refined resources, consider replacing your smelting furnace with several of the portable smelting furnaces. I like to have at least 8 of them, all attached to medium storage or a medium storage silo. I will typically also add 1 soil centrifuge and a couple of medium fluid and soil canisters to this platform as well, so I can produce natural resources and have them automatically smelted. Be sure you leave some space to attach storage with other natural resources you wish to smelt along with enough storage to collect the refined resources. For composite resources, the strategy here is pretty much the same. Use duplicates. Use a platform large enough to hold at least 2 chemistry labs, while leaving yourself room for the resources required to produce the composite resources and for storage to collect the completed composite resources. I also like to attach a large storage silo B to this platform and fill it up with 1 full canister of each of the atmospheric resources. It simply makes more sense to me to store my gases on the same platform as the chemistry labs so that they are always available to create composite resources. Instead of needing to move a gas to that platform, all I have to do is enable output on a medium gas canister and then disable output when I'm finished. When it comes to shredding items and trading for scrap, I typically once again turn to an extra large platform C equipped with an extra large shredder, trade platform, large storage silo B, a couple of medium storage silos, and canisters storing both scrap and Astroneer. I'm able to shred anything I wish and have the scrap automatically stored. When I am ready to trade scrap or Astroneer, I can simply enable the output on the respective canister and have those resources loaded onto the trade platform automatically. When the trade platform rocket returns, it will automatically unload its contents onto the medium storage and reload itself with scrap or Astroneer. For all of these examples, keep in mind that they are all only one way you can go about expanding your base. It would be impossible to demonstrate every conceivable combination of platforms, storage, and production modules. I don't think anyone would want to sit through a course long enough to even try. Instead, use the knowledge you have gained over the past 3 weeks to plan out how you can make use of all the various platforms and storage options to achieve your goals. Do not be afraid to experiment or think outside the box to come up with new ways to improve your own production base, making it both more efficient and a more pleasant place to be. But also keep in mind that more power consumers may mean that you also need to add more power producers. Since you usually do not need to access your power producers all that often, you can place them off to the side of your base or in between other areas. Now, because I know Astroneer Academy recruits are the brightest and most creative Astroneers around, I want to issue a bit of a challenge for a chance to win one of the highly coveted LRD visors. Jump into an adventure instance of the simulation and create a base on any planet or moon that will be judged in 3 categories: overall layout, production efficiency, and aesthetics. Your base should not include terrain or major automation related items, as we have not yet covered those topics, but everything else is fair game. You cannot use creative mode or a custom configuration, however. Feel free to create a full base of operations, a smaller outpost base, or anything in between. You're welcome to submit a base that you've already built, or you can build an entirely new one just for this challenge. Once you are satisfied with what you have built, hit up the link to the Vainglorious Discord in the description below, then head to our base design contest forum channel and create a post with up to 5 photos of your base. You can even include a link to a video of your base as long as that video is under 2 minutes. We will accept submissions for this contest for 45 days after the date this video goes live. Once that 45 days ends, a team of judges will meet privately to score each submission on the criteria I spelled out a moment ago. The winner of the competition will receive a code redeemable for their choice of the Zebra, Checkers, or Leopard LRD visor. Today, you have learned the concepts behind creating outpost bases, along with best practices for creating or moving a production base, along with some tips on expanding production within an existing base. Next week, in Astroneer Academy 205, we will begin a very long mission chain that will introduce us to some incredibly helpful friends. Until then, I'm Brandon, reminding you to keep looking to the stars.